A medical emergency forced a Jetstar flight from Bangkok to Melbourne to divert to Alice Springs over the weekend. But what happened next has left passengers furious. Georgia Simpson has the details.
It's understood a passenger suffered from a suspected stroke mid-flight, which resulted in the plane being diverted to Alice Springs. That sick passenger was offloaded to receive that urgent medical attention. But when the flight went to take off, the pilot realised that it couldn't because there were mechanical issues. As a result, passengers were stuck on the plane for more than 7 hours. There was no in-flight entertainment and barely any food. Alice Springs is a domestic airport, meaning there isn't any international or customs processing facilities. Eventually, they were able to disembark, waiting in a secure room for the replacement flight to arrive. They arrived in Melbourne just before midnight. Passengers say they were frustrated at the way the situation was handled.
I think it'd be right if they consider themselves an Australian business to do the Australian thing and pay everyone the money that they're owed.
7 a.m. till 7 p.m, so 12 hours, half of which was spent in the plane.
Our authorities have got to get it right. We had people stressed.
And now we find out that our bags never even come.
It was an experience for sure, but we're all home and safe and I'm going to go to bed.
A Jetstar spokesperson says safety is always our first priority. When the replacement aircraft arrived, passengers were transferred directly onto the replacement aircraft, which landed in Melbourne just after 11 p.m. last night. We appreciate this has been a lengthy delay. We thank passengers for their patience and understanding as we supported the passenger requiring urgent medical assistance. While passengers arrived in Melbourne late last night, their checked baggage didn't. That will be arriving in Melbourne at some point today.
Joining me now for more on this, our resident aviation expert, Byron Bailey. Byron, it happens a lot. Planes are diverted, things happen, but 7 hours on the tarmac is a long time. How unusual is this?
Yes, this is very unfortunate to arrive at 7:30 on a Sunday morning in a regional airport. And then get some handling and, yeah, it's a nightmare for everybody, and I just don't see how the airline could have done anything different because people are complaining no food, there was no, it was just an extremely awful situation for everybody. And the crew, once they realised they had a technical fault, they would have consulted what's known as their MEL, that permits them to fly on with a fault, and found that this fault they had just didn't allow them to continue the flight. There was nothing they could do. Then, of course, they would have had to contact base operations, and that would take time to organise a flight on a Sunday morning, just the worst time and just a nightmare situation for everybody involved.
So is the big issue here the facilities at Alice Springs, because they had no customs ability, and you're not going to, set up customs just for that purpose. But given where Alice Springs is, if there's an issue in that area, it's the biggest airport for, quite a ways in each direction, that you need some sort of, for want of a better word, holding pen, room that can have some people here comfortably for when this does happen?
Oh, it's a tourist airport, basically. And Alice Springs isn't that big a town. Difficult. But modern aeroplanes are so reliable that Singapore to Sydney, Singapore, Melbourne, and all those other places, there's very few diversions. So, no, they couldn't really have something on standby because you're talking about having staff handling all kinds of equipment necessary. Yeah, it was just an extremely difficult situation. It was a nightmare for the pilots, but I just think they did the right thing. They had no choice, really. And I just feel sorry for the passengers because the conditions on an aeroplane, sitting on the ground where you haven't got the same airflow as in flight, it must have been getting pretty manky towards the end of the 7 hours sitting on the ground.
I've got to admit, when I read babies on board, navigating travel with a couple of young ones myself, I thought that would be a nightmare. What about general talk of Qantas reliability of late? Obviously, Jetstar is a subsidiary. Has there been is it something that the media looks for and we sort of connect the dots and these sort of things happen very regularly, or do you think the overall reliability record has been waning a bit?
Yeah, I just think Qantas just a bit unlucky lately. They've just been having a little bit of a bad run. But I've flown for 3 airlines. It's common to have little incidents occur quite frequently. Most airlines sort of buried the news, but Qantas is a target now for the media, I feel. It's still the safest airline in the world. And Jetstar, well, it's an El Cheapo airline that you get what you pay for, but it's still very safe.
Byron Bailey, always good to get your thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers, Tom.